Genomic technology is driving a new frontier of cancer diagnosis, treatment and disease monitoring, but there are many unanswered questions and challenges. There is a distinct lack of national strategic direction. Regulatory and funding landscapes are complex, the application of technology is patchy, and patients are still experiencing challenges with access and equity to life-changing care. I'm here with Richard Vines, Chair and CEO of Rare Cancers Australia, Deputy Chair of the Australian Genomics Cancer Medicine Centre, or OMICO, Convener of the Australian National Oncology Alliance and the Asia Pacific Oncology Alliance. With all of that going on, we are very grateful for you taking the time to talk with Pathology Technology Australia today. Richard, you're part of some excellent initiatives in your role with Rare Cancer Australia. Can you give us some insights into the key initiatives you're working on right now?
Yeah, sure. Look, Madeline, thank you for the opportunity. This year we're working on two major initiatives. One is called the rarefication of cancer, and that's essentially trying to explain to both politicians, to public servants and to the general public how cancer works. It's such a complex group of diseases. I heard someone say the other day that the number of different cancer types is exactly equal to the number of different cancer patients. And I think that we've only learnt that through the evolution of genomic science, and now what we need to do is not assume that people know that, but if we can explain how it works, why genomic testing, why genomic profiling, genomic science is so important in driving treatments, then it becomes possible to ask for the reforms that we want. We can't just say, as our understanding of science has improved, we want this. We have to make sure that we bring them with us, and that's what rarefication's about. The other one that we're really excited about is called Counting the Cost 2.0. We wrote a report last year around the social cost of inadequately treating patients, and we want to take that further, and I think it has great relevance in the testing sphere, because what we're trying to do is to say it's not just about clinical outcomes. How you value therapies, how you value treatments, how you value testing is much more about the social, financial, economic and ethical constraints as well as the clinical ones. And I was in a room with a large pharma company, and they were bemoaning the fact that these things weren't valued properly, and I said, well, you run clinical trials, you don't run social, ethical, financial trials, and that's what we need to do. So we're looking at ways to build really credible models that we can bring to that, and that they're my two most exciting projects.
I really love that, and it speaks directly to something we're really passionate about at PTA, which is telling the stories about how our members' tests and technology have significant impact on the lives of patients. Can we drill down further and go into a little more detail in how technology plays a role in supporting patients with rare and less common cancers?
Well, I think the easy way to describe it is that when we have currently on our books anything around 1,000 patients, and our navigators talk to them continuously, and probably one of the first questions we would ask any patient is, have you had genomic testing as part of your treatment regime? And too often I think we're looking at genomic testing at the moment as trying to validate a diagnosis from a clinician, whereas really what it should be is the first thing you do is do a panel test or a CGP, and that proves to be that should then be a roadmap for how you diagnose and how you structure a treatment pathway. So for me, it's everything. It's the science is both exciting. It's not it's not a cure, but we're on a pathway, and I think that's really exciting.
We're all aware that Australia's health system is facing significant strain. There are a number of active initiatives to address these challenges, like strengthening Medicare Task Force, for example. What, in your experience, represents the biggest barriers or frustrations in your work so far? And do you see a path forward through what is on the table right now?
I think we've got some work to do. I think that strengthening Medicare Task Force was interesting, but I didn't come away thinking we've solved the problem, put it that way. And we have an interesting dynamic here. We have a mixture of public funded and private funded health delivery. We have federal and state, and my favourite line is, we either have Goldilocks or we have Frankenstein, and I'll leave it up to you and the people watching this to work out which one we've got. But we've got to get smarter. There's a level of integration that is coming, that is in fact here, and it's not like in the old days where the federal government could fund antibiotics or blood pressure tablets and the people in the hospitals could run around and deliver them. We're a much more integrated community now, and particularly in cancer, it's getting really exciting really quickly. And there's a lot of work to do to make sure that we smooth out those pathways and that people can get treatments. At the end of the day, it's only about the patient. It's only about, I personally don't give a damn if someone wants to shift costs from federal to state or state to federal or one state to another. I care about whether or not the patient who's on the end of it is getting timely, effective and accurate treatment. A specific barrier that our patients face every day is the incredible delays in getting access to new therapies. And one of the most frustrating parts of that are the codependent technology process where a treatment requires a test, and the test has to be approved by MSAC, the therapy has to be approved by the PBAC, and the delays are just intolerable, and it's ridiculous. And that a therapy, a life-saving therapy, can be held up for the approval of a relatively inexpensive test. It's not good enough, and that should be an interim step, because what we should have is a national plan around how we're going to roll out genomics, how it's going to work, so that we go back to that comment at the start of this interview where we were talking about the first thing that we do is understand the tumour through genomic analysis, and then we map out the treatment pathway.
Rare Cancers Australia celebrated 10 years of advocacy last year. That's a significant milestone to celebrate all the people you have touched with your work. On a system level, however, what changes, if any, have you witnessed in the healthcare landscape over that decade?
Yeah, look, I think there's a much greater awareness of rare cancers. I once said that in 2012, no one talked about rare cancers, and in 2023, you never have a conversation around cancer that doesn't include rare. We haven't solved all the problems, but what's happening with the evolution of genomic science is that, as I said at the start, all cancers are getting rarer and rarer, and every cancer patient is a different cancer type. And the only way forward for this is to have a comprehensive national plan around genomics and genomic testing. And that's not just clinical. That's also around, once we start delving into people's DNA and understanding what we're learning about individuals, then that comes with an obligation to protect. And I think it's important that your members are part of that discussion, because it will create issues if we don't. I think there is also an issue around the economic and financial elements of this, in terms of that, and the ethical, they all meld together. But we can't continue to treat people with therapies that, if we did genomic testing, we would know would be ineffective. It's immoral not to test, and this just to let them be treated and take precious time away from both alternative and more effective treatments, but sometimes just time away from their family with false hope. There's a whole ethical issue around this that we need to be open and frank and discussing about it. And the last side of it is the economic benefit that goes with this, that better testing means better treatments, and if we learnt nothing from COVID, our former PM, Scott Morrison, said in the 2019 election, because we have a healthy economy, we can have a healthy PBS and a healthy Medicare. And what turned out to be true is that only if you have a healthy population can you have a healthy economy. And that's what we learned in the last 3 years. That's what COVID taught us, and that's what we should be focusing on.
So there are some significant initiatives in play around the world that integrate technological advances into national strategic approaches to more holistically manage cancer. Programs such as the Taiwan Precision Medicine Study and the UK National Disease Registration Service, for example. We can certainly learn from our global peers. From your perspective, where do you see things done well, and what does that look like?
Let me put it into context. My first job in the world was working as a trainee actuary, and I have a great love of data, and I have an enormous perception of its value. And right now we have piecemeal data, we have that spread between federal and state, that spread, we have little data fiefdoms in hospitals that don't make any sense at all. And we have unnecessary secrecy around some of the data that we know is there and it's integrated. You can't get access to de-identified MBS or PBS data. You can only get samples, for example. We've got to fix that. We've got to be able to bring these things together. We do need a holistic national database similar to the Karolinska Institute in Norway, similar to what they're doing in Taiwan. And to get there, we're going to have a mature conversation around data privacy, and not be loose with it, not be casual or cavalier with it, but realistic about the benefits and the protections that we can put in place. And I think, we have to be strong, and we have to be determined and understand the enormous benefits and weigh them against what I would consider to be manageable and reasonable risks of it.
We've covered a lot of ground, exploring the intersection of pathology technology with advancing the care of patients experiencing rare or less common cancer. Thank you so much for your time. Let's finish by giving you a crystal ball right now. What does the ideal future look like for you in this space?
Look, I think we've talked about it a little bit, and we wrote a report in 2020, which was called Vision 2030, and it was in 10 years' time, what would cancer treatment look like? I can tell you that report resulted directly in the then Minister Hunt mandating the development of the Australian Cancer Plan, which has a large focus on genomic testing. But I would love a situation where the first thing that happens to someone diagnosed with cancer is that we actually run the tests and actually understand it and sit down and say, hey, this is what's causing your cancer. These are some of the risks that we can address. These are the treatments that address it. Let's get on with it. Let's monitor it, and let's not sit here and work in without the full. Let's not work in the dark. Let's get this right. And I think, I increasingly see we have patients that we've been supporting for 8, 9, 10 years since we started, who were treated because we were able to identify through a FISH test, for example, their rare non-small cell lung cancer mutation. We've treated them, and it's not just the fact that they're alive, it's the fact, one that springs to mind was a young mum whose daughter was 3, and that girl is starting high school now, and she's had her mum all that time. That's the power of targeted precision oncology, and I think we just have to be determined to bring that to the fore and get it there, and that will be, by 2030 we'll have nailed it, and hopefully by 2025, but we'll definitely do it by then. I think it's really important, and I would just encourage all those who are watching to be loud and proud about it, because it's so critical that not only is this science implemented, but that it's implemented here in Australia.
Thank you so much, Richard, for sharing your valuable experience and the excellent role Rare Cancers Australia is playing to support the lives of Australians with rare and less common cancers. We've only touched on some aspects of the full complexity of this care landscape. There are many more moving parts to coordinate in order to effect much needed change. What is clear is that the impact we're all looking for lies within the experience of patients, how they experience their care. It's also clear that changes in those care pathways come as a result of technology innovation. So I call on you to join us and champion better and more equitable access to this life-changing technology.